Welcome to the Pop Cult Online Power Hour, the video podcast dedicated to the 10-year-old in all of us. And I'm your host, Rick Gordon. In this issue, Bob Retall and I discuss whatever we want to. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show, and we'll be right back after these brief messages.
The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar cookies danced in their heads.
It just wouldn't be Christmas without baking Pillsbury sugar cookies. They're fun for the whole family. Just slice and bake. You get free stencils inside every package to trim a tree, light up a star, do your own thing. Get Pillsbury's Holiday Cookie Kit, found only in the dairy case.
And have a very Pillsbury Christmas.
Brought to you by Kraft, reminding you that there are 21 cooking days till Christmas. Tonight, recipes to get the holiday spirit started early with a tree trimming party, tasty warm-ups for carolers, delicious gifts from the kitchen, and dishes for a portable Christmas dinner. You'll find all these recipes in tonight's listing in TV Guide magazine, so follow along.
This week, or next, when you set up the Christmas tree, invite friends over to help with the trimming. You'll want to nibble while you work. So ornament your buffet with these refreshments from Kraft. Petite quiche are little cheese pies, an excellent hot finger food. Make them with bacon and Kraft shredded natural Swiss, stirred into an egg custard mixture and baked in tiny pastry shells. Now, the tangy taste of Miracle Whip salad dressing is featured in this festive holiday snack. Combine it with Philadelphia brand cream cheese. Then add chopped apple and shredded Kraft natural cheddar for a crunchy fruit and cheese spread that's very good on apple slices or on crackers. Here's a secret to use year-round. Kraft Thousand Island dressing, enlivened with green onion and hard-cooked egg, makes a tasty dip. Serve it with dippers of crisp, fresh vegetables for a new, light Christmas treat. This fondue is great fun with little effort because it's made of Kraft caramels, thinned and flavored with orange. Your guests treat themselves by dipping cubes of pound cake and rolling them in nuts. All of tonight's recipes are ready for you right now in tonight's listing section of TV Guide magazine. As the tree's decorated and the food enjoyed, the holiday spirit is well launched. There's a happy season ahead with the good food and good food ideas from Kraft.
Yo.
Hello, hello.
So what is this bizarre obsession with the Atlas era?
I blame you. I've pretty much read all the comics there are from the Silver Age on. And, you know me, you have moved forward while I have moved backwards. So it was only natural that I settle someplace, between the Golden Age and the Silver Age. And I've been digging around in that space for a while now, and I'm really starting to like it. And I'm really starting to hate it. There was a lot of content back then, and not all of it was good.
Yeah.
My main focus were the humor books. I guess they're categorized as humor books, but they're basically like Archie type books, and not romance books, but girl books like Millie the Model and Tilly the Typist and that type of thing. I dabbled with the funny animal books. Couldn't really get into it that much. Right now, I'm fixated on Marvel. Early Marvel. Like I was just... Yeah, exactly. Like I was just
Atlas
reading...
era Journey into Mystery.
I was just reading before we went on, Tales to Astonish and Tales of Suspense. Both number one. They both came out in 1959. And... They were interesting. Yes. And for those who aren't familiar, they're basically what would you call them? EC type stories?
Yeah, I mean, like Tales of Suspense #1. I just read coincidentally last night. I actually, they were having I guess a Black Friday sale that went forward. Like Marvel Unlimited was 75 cents for the first month.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, what the hell? 75 cents. So I signed up for it. And it's like, I've read most of this stuff. Let me read Tales of Suspense #1. That's something I haven't read.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled up Tales of Suspense #1. And I mean, it's like, it starts out with Al Williamson.
Yep.
And then it's got, there's a Don Heck and John Buscema and Steve Ditko and Larry Lieber. And, it just, here's the cover.
I was just looking at that. That's amazing.
Al Williamson, it's like, damn. And, I mean, the stories are EC light. I mean, the art is good,
right.
But I mean, Stan is writing all the stories, and Stan is not as accomplished a writer as, some of the guys who are writing some of the EC books, I don't think. Some of the stories were a little flaky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, there's that.
But I like, if you read enough of it, yeah, there you go.
Lorna the Jungle Queen. I had never heard of Lorna before I got this.
How many Jungle Queens were there?
There were a lot of them. Rima, Shanna, Rula.
Rima,
yeah, there was a whole bunch of them. They all had some leopard. I mean, it was like really dangerous to be a leopard around these Jungle Queens because pretty much every one of them had some kind of leopard skin lingerie on as their mode of dress.
I think. Oh wow, Shanna the She-Devil. That was the one that I remember, which I think was a reboot of a Golden Age version of Shanna. But I think she would she have backup stories in some of the Marvel magazines, if I remember correctly. And then I think she eventually got her own. What do we got there? Yeah,
Ennis.
Tell me a little bit about Menace. I'm not familiar with that book.
Menace is, it's another one of these anthology books, but it's basically the more of the horror type of, I would call it more of the, Tales from the Crypt kind of things. I mean, look, there's some like weird two-headed zombie going on here. Mm-hmm. Some pretty gruesome stuff. Here's like the Moon Man at the end, the big reveal. Look at this freak. It's you got your suspense stories that didn't necessarily have the supernatural monsters in it. This seems to have fairly high reliance on your werewolves and ghosts and vampires and zombies and that kind of business. Mm-hmm. Whereas your Tales to Astonish and Tales to Suspense had more of the science fiction-y kind of monsters, Grotu, the monster from Dimension Z, and, lots of space aliens and, that kind of business. Menace, a lot of zombie, horror, supernatural kind of threats.
It's weird. I think Marvel at that time was really pushing for the sci-fi. I mean, we had the aftermath of the Wertham Report, and superheroes are pretty much. I don't think there were any at Marvel at that time. Not by the list I'm looking at.
Outside the list of you had your Jungle Girl and this delectable beauty here. She was sort of not really a superhero, but kind of superhero-y. Mm-hmm. She ended up in some of these she was retrofitted into the Atlas era Avengers, and along with some kind of robot man kind of thing, the 3D man. Remember in the 70s when they'd have that 50s Avengers, what if the Avengers had started up in the 1950s, and it was like the 3D man and Johnny Woo from Shield,
Oh, that's right.
The Yellow Claw, and that's one thing they haven't really reprinted is the Yellow Claw stuff.
Wow.
That was an Atlas era.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's political correctness issues with that, but
yeah, I mean, with a lot of this stuff, though, right? Anything you're reprinting from back in the 40s and 50s is, I mean, I'm reading these Western things, and they're like wildly racist. I mean, they always, because if you're out in the West, they were building the railroads, and then they like throw in the really horribly racist Chinese people, and then you got the Indians that, it's just like, it's terrible.
Deliberately crudely drawn.
Like I was reading one, I picked up a jungle, a 50s jungle one from somewhere. It was a cheap one, and it was something, and it was like in Africa. So of course you got the natives with the bones through their nose and the big feathery headdresses and big shields and stuff and jumping around. It's just really, is everything back then was all like that. It was when you get like Congo Bill and the DC side, those guys. There was some really wildly politically incorrect stuff going on in those jungle type of books.
I was like I said before, I was digging into. I'm right now. I'm in the middle of 1959, and I'm looking at Marvel's lineup. Gunsmoke Western. Nice little play on words to.
Yeah.
Journey into Mystery, Kid Cold Outlaw, Love Romances, Millie the Model, My Own Romance, Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, and that's for January. Then for February, we've got Battle, we've got Patsy and Hetty, we've got Patsy Walker, we've got Strange Tales, we've got Strange Worlds, a book I've never heard of, Two Gun Kid, World of Fantasy, Wyatt Earp, and that's it for February, and then it goes back. So the books looks like they were every other month, and not a lot of titles in 59. So we could see, Marvel might have been on its way out.
Well, I mean that was around when they rebooted. It was with the FF and Amazing Fantasy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was 61, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that was Stan Lee's uncle, on his last ditch effort to keep the lights on in that division.
Yeah, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what would stick.
Well, it's funny that Stan was, reportedly, to hear the stories that he tells, was ready to, kind of just give up on the comics and go get a, quote unquote real job. That's what prompted him to do Spider-Man the way that he wanted to do a costumed hero.
Well, you got to remember too, by that time he was 40.
Yeah.
Wife, couple of kids, and an industry that was really just on the verge of its last legs. I mean, if it wasn't for, Showcase over the DC side, who knows what would have happened at DC?
Well, I mean, then you had, it went on because Showcase was in the 50s, right? Was that 57?
Mm-hmm.
By the time Marvel came along, DC had rebooted everything to the point that they actually had the Justice League out.
Mm-hmm.
And the FF was, again, to hear the stories, you've heard that. I mean, like, that
Marvel's
was
answer
Marvel's
to-
answer to the Justice League, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, but then Stan put that different twist on them. They were ended up more like the Challengers of the Unknown, actually, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They had the superpowers. I mean, the Challengers didn't have superpowers, right?
Right.
So it was almost like you take the Justice League and cross them with the Challengers, and you get the FF because you got the superpowers, but, the Challengers were this tight-knit, familial kind of group, right? And they didn't, they had the jumpsuits, but they didn't have the unique costumes and their own special lives away from that title. And that's what the FF was.
Right.
They kind of took those two concepts of the superpowers, but then the family feel and all that. And I'm just like now working myself into, they weren't as really as original as, as all that. Right.
Well,
But you take the good with the bad, but the concepts that he started there,
mm-hmm.
the human foibles, that extended then when, because his second one, right, you had the FF, and then you had the Hulk,
mm-hmm.
right? Hulk came before Spider-Man.
Right.
So you had the Hulk. And again, what is the Hulk? I mean, the Hulk is not really a superhero. He's this monster, he's like a scientist, and it's not, and even actually before that, right? Before even the FF, you had the Ant-Man. You had the Man in the Anthill, right?
All starts with Ant-Man.
In Tales to Astonish 27. Then you get the FF, then you get Hulk, and then you get Spider-Man.
Right.
So Spider-Man was the first full-on costumed superhero that came out of Marvel, because you can't really call it back then. I mean, FF and Hulk and Ant-Man, before Ant-Man came back in costume in Tales to Astonish 35, right?
Mm-hmm.
35. That was the costumed era, but Spider-Man kicked off that costumed era.
Right.
And then I'm going to look back here. Yeah, you got Thor and Iron Man and, the others after that, right? Even looking at Doctor Strange, right? Doctor Strange, that poor guy, he didn't even get a cover until he had been around for about a year. I mean, Strange Tales 110, there's no mention of it. There's not even a mention of this dude on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
It's Human Torch. It doesn't even say,
oh, that's right.
And with Doctor Strange or anything. And then several issues later, you get a blurb. There's just a bubble on there saying that there's a Doctor Strange story. And then after that, then you get like a little Doctor Strange head. And, then after that, you get the little kind of banner on the bottom, with like a little drawing of Doctor Strange. But I mean, he was around for a while before he even got any cover action, which is kind of strange to think of, looking back on who that early lineup of Marvel Comics.
So would you consider Doctor Strange a second or third tier character? And really...
if someone back then was going to be third tier, he'd have to be it, right? I mean, later on, when the Marvel Universe got larger, he kind of moved up into the second tier because, he was one of the original group.
Mm-hmm.
But, he was pretty disrespected in the day when he was, first coming out. I mean, not only didn't he have his own book, but he's like running back seat to the Human Torch for a full year. So
Well, I think the public didn't know what to think of this guy. He wasn't. He was just weird, you know. His stories were weird. The art was weird. Everything about him was weird. Nothing about him had a sense of familiarity about it, like any other magician, like Mandrake. Mandrake looks like a magician. You know what magicians can do. This guy's a master of the mystic arts. You don't know what that is. I loved it because it was different, and every story was different. But it almost felt like the writers didn't know what to do with them. The reading audience really didn't know what to do with them. But since he was one of the originals, he just kind of hung in there, and he would just
came into his own. I mean,
towards the late '60s. Yeah,
I would say that as far as Ditko's work goes, Doctor Strange is my favorite Ditko.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, because for me, I came into Spider-Man. Romita was doing Spider-Man. So my Spider-Man, my personal Spider-Man is Romita.
Mm-hmm.
And then I subsequently went back and I saw Ditko on Spider-Man, but it just wasn't my Spider-Man has always been the Romita Spider-Man.
Right.
That's if I conjure up an image of Spider-Man in my head, it's drawn by John Romita Sr.
Right. And I'm the exact same way, and I did the same thing.
But
I went back, saw the early Ditko issues, and was like, all right. But as I got older, I could appreciate what his rabid fans were talking about, especially towards the end. You could really see sparks of genius.
I mean, some of those issues are just phenomenal when you go back and look at them and you can appreciate it. But still, for me, the weirdness of a Doctor Strange book, right? That, with all these, pathways off and the funky planets flying around and the mindless ones and Dormammu and just all the crazy stuff that's going on. When you pair Steve Ditko with Stan Lee and all of his By the Hoary Hosts of Haga and the Mystic Moons of Munapur and all this kind of crazy stuff that Stan would come up with to put in Doctor Strange's mouth. That made Doctor Strange, for me, a unique and a cool character.
So do you think that was Stan's first really original character? Because when I look at Fantastic Four, I know it's just a straight up adventure strip, but it definitely, and he said it himself, it has the feel of like a B movie from the 50s. I mean, you've got the scientist, his girlfriend, her hot-headed brother. It's classic drive-in stuff. And you've got the Hulk, which would be the second feature, that same drive-in, which is this rampaging monster, and the teen hero, Rick Jones, trying to save everybody in the movie. But I mean, Stan's work was very derivative in the beginning, almost until he hit Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was unlike anything that was out there, and I don't
know. I mean, I would say Spider-Man was not derivative in that.
True.
When he created Spider-Man, he created the template for the Marvel age of heroes where, Peter Parker's the schlub, right? Whereas even though Reed is not the most suave guy, I mean, he's a scientist. He's building rocket ships. He's got Sue Storm for a girlfriend. And, Spider-Man changed the mold because you had never seen before that the hero getting pushed around at school by the bully kids and worrying about where he's going to get Aunt May's medicine from and, all these kinds of elements. So that was something. Now, then he moved on from that. And the next one that came after Spider-Man was Thor, right?
Yes.
Thor, Journey into Mystery came after, right? So when you look at Thor, he's now doing something else new. I mean, the gods are not different, but taking that god and putting him in this outlandish costume with the cape and the real distinctive part about Thor which isn't completely original, but giving him that Shakespearean kind of pseudo Shakespearean, right? The speech pattern. I mean, and that's what Stan did with a lot of these books is he made, as much as they stood out visually from the art side, he put words and personalities to them that the two of those things together combined to make something greater than either on their own. And that's, all these guys who give Stan no credit and say he steals credit from, all these guys who are like put Kirby on a pedestal and to put Kirby, I've said this before, you don't need to denigrate Stan Lee to put Jack Kirby on a pedestal or Steve Ditko on a pedestal. I look at it and I say, when I read stuff that Steve Ditko created by himself, I don't enjoy any of that stuff as much as I enjoy Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. When I look at stuff that Jack Kirby created by himself, I do not enjoy it as much as I enjoy the Fantastic Four and Thor and the Marvel characters that Stan and Jack created together. So there was a real collaborative effort there, whether it was 70-30 on favor of the artist or whatever. There is a certain spark that I think that Stan brought to it, because Thor, without the Shakespearean language and all this kind of personality and all that kind of forsooth and all this business, he's just another, you get the black racer, Yeah,
well, something. Thor was never a favorite of mine until later on. Thor always felt like a story, like a one-off from Tales to Astonish about, Don Blake being in up in the hills in the cave and the aliens, and the Thor thing. That seemed like that was like a one-shot thing that they just continued. But later on, when Kirby got involved, that's the Kirby I like. In collaboration with Stan Lee, the Vince Colletta inks, just the grandeur. He's restrained. I love a restrained Kirby. I don't like the crazy anything goes Kirby. What the hell did I just read recently? Oh, 2001. I read an issue of that the other night. It almost gave me nightmares. It was really, really off the wall. And that's not to say that he's not a competent writer or a great artist. It's just not my cup of tea. But getting back to Stan, the one thing I love about Stan Lee, and again, like you said, it's all about collaboration. The guy was churning out so much content in the early days of Marvel that people just don't realize how many stories he was churning out in a month. Everybody knows about the superhero work he was doing, but then you had all the westerns and the romance stuff, and you pick up any two books, and you really can't see any similarities. He wrote each book had its own distinct voice. When you read an issue of Spider-Man, it didn't read like an issue of Daredevil, or it was just amazing.
And I think that's why he, maybe if you look back at it, he gave them these wildly distinctive, feels, because then he could write all these things at the same time and just kind of step from this one into that one, and just make them feel different. I wonder if he would do like the plots for a bunch of 3 or 4 issues in a row once he got in the mode, get his head in the right place.
I would imagine. I imagine him acting out the plots, to an audience to get a feel for it. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. The Marvel method was he would come up with a plot, give the plot to the artist. The artist would do the art, and then he would go back in and do the script on top of the art.
Right.
So that's amazingly difficult. I mean, that's a lot of trust in your artist. That's a lot. I mean, it's an amazing way to create a comic.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other way, which is just a full script, which is, taking a panel and describing everything in the panel. You can do it in one sentence, or you could be like Alan Moore and write 4 pages to describe what's in one panel. So, yeah, kudos to Stan Lee.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, so after Thor, you got Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another one that's very different from what you've really seen before.
Right.
Had you seen something like that before? I mean, when you add in the twist that he's the industrialist, he's got the heart problem, he's, putting the thing together, he's got this armor suit, and, it starts out as this giant tin can worth of thing, but, pretty quickly, within 6 months or so, he's in that sleek red and gold armor.
Yeah, and it's a very slick book because they're dealing with technology, which wasn't as cool as technology is nowadays. There's still, we're coming off of a war, and World War II, 15 years prior, but there's still a fear about technology. The space age is up and running, so now people are getting a little more interested in technology, and I think that's where the success of Iron Man, because they're talking about transistors and vacuums and this and that. That's all those little things that people really dug. Plus, with Iron Man, just like with all of his other characters, all the other Marvel characters, there was a flaw. One flaw that everybody could understand. And on the DC side, they were like gods, but on the Marvel side, they were more humane, more human. Tony Stark could die at any minute. Peter Parker could get his ass kicked, and his aunt could die. The Fantastic Four, who knows what could happen? They're irradiated. Except for Thor, he's a Norse god.
Yeah. And Ant-Man and Wasp came along in there somewhere.
Oh yeah.
In the costumes, right? I mean, Henry Pym shrunk down, Ant little guy. That was before FF, but I mean, that was more a standard, late 50s era, just weird mystery story. People were getting shrunk and running around with bugs and cats chasing them and growing giant and going out and all that kind of stuff. That happened all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When they made him into the superhero, that was a little different. Then they just throw the costume on him. Okay, let's get another superhero going in here.
You think that's what it was? It was just he was there, he had his book, put him in a costume. Let's see what happens.
Think so. Yeah, I mean that came along after Spider-Man, probably, and somewhere around the Thor area, somewhere Thor Iron Man-ish. Had to be Ant-Man. And then, so all those guys are there, right? So you've got, other than Spider-Man, right? You've got Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, Ant-Man. Let's chuck them together. Voila, Avengers. And then you get the X-Men, which is that one's one of the weirdest coincidences in parallel development.
Oh, that Doom Patrol?
That Doom Patrol?
Yeah.
Because, they came out within a month or two of each other, with the 4 characters and the guy in a wheelchair, running the show, and people they try to say one copied the other, but they couldn't,
Yeah, but that's where the similarity ends. I mean, the X-Men is obviously an allegory for whatever, racism, you name it, any number of things. It was tackling social issues in a way that Stan Lee could do. I never really read much Doom Patrol, but I do remember that I really disliked DC at the time, and it was just something about the stories over there that were just weird, and I could never put my finger on it, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized that the Marvel Universe is our universe. There's no Central City, there's New York City. There's elements in all the books that that are a touchstone to my own reality. So in the back of my mind, these things could happen. A guy could step on a landmine and possibly build armor. That is possible to me, as opposed to getting struck by lightning and doused with chemicals, which is, just as probable, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got your radioactive bomb going off for the Hulk and stuff, but
But the other thing too is, I think once they saw that superheroes were popular again, because they just basically DC just rebooted all their old Golden Age heroes. Marvel did something a little different.
They made,
but they brought their guys back too.
They put some pretty wild switches on it. I mean, you keep the same name, but I mean, like the Golden Age Atom and the Silver Age Atom, there's very little similarity there.
Yeah,
Same
Green
with
Lantern also.
Green Lantern, Flash to a lesser extent. I mean, they're both fast. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference as much there.
Mm-hmm. But Marvel did bring back Submariner and Captain America pretty quickly also.
Yes. So those guys came back, and then you got Daredevil, who's another first. It's like blind superhero.
Right.
There was a lot of things going on, and then you got Doctor Strange coming along, and he really closed it out, right? I mean, you had once you got those guys, that was the first wave was pretty much over.
That was.
Except maybe, no, I mean Nick Fury came along later. I mean, he had Sergeant Fury running around, but it was several years later that you got Shield.
Yeah, but wasn't there some weird distribution deal that Marvel had with DC that kind of,
Oh yeah, it limited the number of books that they could put out, which is why they had, they were doubling up on these books. That's why you had, Human Torch and Doctor Strange in Strange Tales, and Hulk and Submariner and Astonish, and Cap and Iron Man in Suspense.
Yep.
And then when that went away, but Fury came along before that, because Fury came along and just displaced the Human Torch out of Strange Tales.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So he came along and he took the place, and it became Nick Fury and Doctor Strange in Strange Tales. So, I mean, you could argue that he was the last of the first wave or the first of the second wave, whichever way you want to go. Because it was after that it was at least, I'm trying to think of how far Strange Tales went before, because Fury got into Strange Tales in the 140s sometime, I think. Maybe the late 140s, and it was like up around at least 170 or so that they blew that all apart and went off, and it became just Doctor Strange, right? And then
he got his own book.
Shield, and the same thing. The numbering of Tales of Suspense got carried on to Captain America, and Iron Man got a new number 1.
Right,
The
right.
Hulk got the numbering of Tales to Astonish. Submariner got a new number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That was all around 69, right?
yeah. So I mean, it was a good 2 years, 1 to 2 years after Fury came along.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that you could probably call Fury the last of the first wave. There was a little gap there.
Huh. I never really thought of it that way.
And poor Ant-Man, he got dissed out. He got booted out of Tales to Astonish in favor of the Submariner, right?
Come on, he had the Avengers.
Yeah. But he had already, he didn't last as Ant-Man very long, right?
What was that, like 2 issues?
No, he was Ant-Man for a while. But, then the Wasp came along. Wasp came along in...
No, I meant in the
44.
Avengers. I thought he was only Ant-Man for an issue or 2, and then he became Giant Man.
Yeah, well, the Avengers came along a ways into, because he became Ant-Man in Tales to Astonish 35.
Mm-hmm.
Wasp didn't come along until 44.
Oh, okay.
So, it was 9 months before the Wasp came along.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a few issues after that he became Giant Man in there. So, he was probably Ant-Man for at least a year, if not a little more. But then they probably figured, that's kind of limiting. Well, plus, once you had the Wasp, it was kind of redundant, right?
Right.
You had 2 little characters. So having the, it's just like having a big giant guy, and then you still got the Wasp. That's even weirder, So you have Giant Man and the Wasp. That was, that lasted a while.
He became Goliath.
And then he ended up having to share the book with the Hulk.
Yes.
The Hulk didn't. The Hulk lasted 6 issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Hulk has the most spotty. The Hulk lasted 6 issues in his own book,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was kind of not published for a while. I don't remember exactly for how long, and then he comes in to Tales to Astonish and shares that with Giant Man for a while. And then they kick Giant Man out and bring in the Submariner. And that was after Submariner had, Submariner was debuted as a villain, right, in FF.
Right.
And
Well,
he made several
anti-hero.
appearances. Well, yeah, but really, he was a foil to the FF and like kidnapping Sue Storm and dragging her down to the ocean. Hey, let me have your woman, that's
Get a room.
little antisocial, as such things go.
Now, where did Marvel superheroes fit into this?
Well, that was in the 70s. That was a reprint book.
Really?
So Marvel superheroes reprinted Tales to Astonish.
Oh, okay. I just seem to remember some Doctor Doom stories that I wasn't really familiar with at the time, and I really like them.
Doctor Doom was in Astonishing Tales when they first started up Astonishing Tales. It was Doctor Doom and Kazar.
Maybe that's the book I'm thinking of. I think
And
that's
then
what
they
it is.
also had a Black Widow in that for a while.
Right.
Then Kazar took it himself for a while, and then it became Deathlock.
But that book came later. That wasn't one of the original holdovers from the 50s. That was...
No, Astonishing was a new book in the 70s.
okay.
That was one of the books that, when they started proliferating,
Mm-hmm.
it was the same thing. They did Marvel Tales, they did Marvel Superheroes, they did Marvel Spectacular, Marvel Triple Action, Marvel Double
Right.
Feature. They started doing all kinds of stuff. That was around when I started reading comics, and that's why I knew so much about the early Marvel comics.
Well,
because,
that's the only way you could get it was these
right.
great
But you were
reprints.
buying that stuff every month.
Yeah.
It's just a quarter, and you got yourself these old things that I didn't know They were just.
I think my favorite was Marvel Triple Action, because I was a big Avengers fan at the time, and to see them, in the early days, that pared down, membership with just Cap and Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. That, to me, that was fantastic, and I fell in love with Don Heck's art, and I mean, it was just great stuff. Great. That book I look forward to more than the new Avengers book.
I liked the regular. I mean, when I started reading Avengers, it was after was it Neil Adams did some, or Barry Windsor? I guess it was Barry Windsor.
Well, they both did, but
it was after the Kree Skrull War.
That was Neil. Yeah.
I came in at 106.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was Iron Man, Thor, Vision, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, Black Widow. This was the lineup that they had on the team then. And it was Black Panther was on the team. And,
I came in around the 120s.
Yeah, so that was around the Celestial Madonna.
Yeah, maybe even earlier, Avengers versus Defenders.
That was 116, 116.
Yeah, so I jumped in the teens then, because that blew my little mind. I couldn't wrap my head around that crossover.
Yeah,
it's like, why are the Avengers fighting these other heroes? And who are these other heroes? Defenders? What the hell is that? Wow, it's the world's greatest non-team.
Yeah, that was you look at it, that's all the B-sides, You got Doctor Strange, Hulk, and Submariner. Because, I mean, I guess Hulk and Submariner kind of went together. Because they were both...
How did they not win every fight, though? That was my thing.
Well, and then you had Silver Surfer in there, too, and it's like, come on. Doctor Strange... Hulk, Submariner, Silver Surfer. They should wipe the floor with everybody. But,
not against the Earth's mightiest heroes. Not the world's greatest superheroes. The Earth's mightiest superheroes. That had so much more gravitas to it. I read both books. I read JLA and Avengers, but, Earth's mightiest. Whew, you can't beat that, especially when you have the evil eye floating around.
I mean, if you look at it, you got Thor and Iron Man and the Vision. That is right there. That's some pretty heavy hitters.
Yep.
And then Cap, is the super strategist and Black. I mean, it's funny because you went like really mega powerful, and then like kind of not very powerful but very street smart and sharp. That's Cap and Black Panther were like that, right?
Right.
I mean, they kind of just got stuff done, and you would believe they were like Batman, right?
Right.
So it's like Batman, the dude has no powers, but you kind of buy that he's, just gonna, figure out some way to take down Superman through his guile, and that's Captain America's like that. You give Captain America that benefit of the doubt. Plus, he's got that shield,
right.
That Batman didn't have.
So, my biggest question is, and see, I never read the Avengers when Black Widow was an Avenger, and it never made sense to me because I thought she was a good fit as a partner to Daredevil out in San Francisco, and that's about the extent of it. Why is she on the Avengers? And she's a Russian spy, for crying out loud.
She was tied up with Hawkeye and Iron Man from way back, though, right?
Way back.
I think that's how. Well, I mean, from her debut, right?
Right.
I mean, she debuted in Tales of Suspense with Iron Man, and one in Hawkeye. Didn't she like had Hawkeye wrapped around her little finger, doing some kind of scheme for her when Hawkeye debuted too? Didn't she like trick him into doing stuff?
Yeah, and
He's full of
Hawkeye
bad-
was a really interesting character because he wasn't a real clean-cut good guy. This guy had a kind of a shady past there, you know?
Well, he's like Carney, you know?
Yeah. You don't have to call him names. Yeah, him and the swordsman. Couple of carnies.
Carnival folk. Can't
Carny
trust them.
folk. Carny folk joining the Avengers. Wow. What's the world come to?
Yeah.
And how did Swordsman become an Avenger after he tried to kill them early on? I'll
Well,
never
it was,
figure
you know,
that out.
whole thing, you know, it was like kind of like nepotism. You know somebody on the Avengers, you get invited on the Avengers. You could be, you know, the crappiest hero out there, and as long as you like got an in, that's like, I know this guy. Get in there. I mean, that's how Swordsman got on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
look at it. And then some of them, they just like kind of, they would hang around with the team long enough. They just kind of, you know, Moondragon's been hanging around for a long time. I guess he's a member now, you know, or Mantis or
Mantis,
something. You know? It's
yeah.
like,
I'm
how
sick
did
of
they
looking at her.
actually become members? They just
Make
like
her a
were
member so
they're
we can send
there.
her somewhere. Or you could try to kill them, and then they'll invite you on. Wonder Man, Vision, any number of people tried to kill the Avengers and wind up becoming Avengers.
Yeah, that's the alternate method. You redeem the redemption play. Get them in there.
Maybe they should bring
Pulled
back.
you out of the Atlas era. I pulled you back into the Marvel Age of Comics, right?
Yeah, you
Sorry.
did. Because now I'm thinking about Korvac. Maybe he should be the newest Avenger. Right? He killed them all. Brought them all back.
Well, the Beyonder. The Molecule Man.
Oh, Molecule Man. Wow. Not a fan.
Lightning bolts on your face and
Yeah. Who's your favorite? All right, we're in Avengers land. Let's go with it. Who's your favorite Avengers villain or villains?
they don't have very many what I would consider to be memorable villains.
Yeah, they don't really have a
would to
rogues
go with
gallery.
Ultron. I mean, Ultron is, you know, the big bad for the Avengers, in my mind.
Do you think they used him too much though?
Well, they used him every now and again. I always thought it was kind of fun that they would just keep bringing him back in like a new version.
Ultron 5, Ultron 6, Ultron 7, new and improved Ultron 8.
Ultron 43. Here he comes.
He's made of adamantium, for crying out loud. You can't destroy him. He keeps dying. He keeps coming
Ultron
back.
head.
I've always had a soft spot for the Zodiac guys. Something about running around in a big bull costume, beating up on the Avengers, really appealed to me.
I like Graviton.
Yeah. You know what? I like supervillain groups, and I like quirky ones that shouldn't succeed. So naturally, the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime is a perennial favorite for me, because you could put these idiots up against anybody, and they're going to have their asses handed to them. Doesn't matter.
I always liked the Wrecking Crew.
Oh my god, I forgot all about them.
But they had like magical Asgardian. Isn't there
That's
some
right.
Asgardian element to that junk that they had? You know, you had like what was it? Thunderball had the wrecking ball
The big
and
wrecking
chain.
ball,
Kinda
and
like
Wrecker had
Wrecker
that
just had a
mystical
big
crowbar.
right? Bulldozer just had like a steel thing around his head, and he would butt things. And then Pile Driver was the other one, and he had like didn't he have something on his fists so he would punch stuff?
Wow.
And to me, it was like the Wrecker and is Thunderball, right?
Mm-hmm.
The James Bond movie.
Well, sometimes these guys would spin off by themselves too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never found that, you know, really though, outside of Ultron, the Avengers, I didn't really think that they had distinctive villains, and that's a challenge for like the Justice League. If you think of the Justice League over on DC, who is a Justice League villain? You know, you think of like maybe the Royal Flush Gang or something like that, but they're kind of feeble as, you know, as villains go. I mean, there were a lot of one-offs and stuff, but didn't really have, like, when you have these big teams like that, they didn't really have that. You know, maybe you had a Despero or something like that, but not like, you know, you kind of tell like the heroes, because the heroes, the good heroes, have these really distinctive rogues galleries.
Right.
That's probably a topic for like a whole different show.
Mm-hmm.
We should talk about rogues galleries and great rogues galleries, because there's a lot of heroes that have tremendous rogues galleries.
When you think of rogues gallery, who's the first hero you think of?
Me personally, I love Spider-Man and his rogues.
See, when I think of rogues, I think of Flash. Right off, bam.
I wasn't as much of a fan. I mean, because they're called the rogues, right?
That's
but
probably
just
why.
As far as I mean, to me, I would personally, I must admit, Batman has a better rogues gallery than Spider-Man. He's got a more developed one. He's got a deeper thing. I mean, Spider-Man's got a good one, but I mean, Batman's got a tremendous rogues gallery. When you get like
I don't know if it's better than Spider-Man's though. Come on. I mean,
Spider-Man's still my favorite.
Yeah.
My favorite one is Spider-Man, but I'm talking the difference between favorite and better. I don't prefer Batman's, but I think it's a superior group of villains.
I think every one of Spider-Man's villains can give him a run for his money. That could easily defeat Spider-Man, but yet he triumphs. I don't get that feeling with Batman. I mean, I could name off a handful of their characters, and they're interesting, but maybe it's just because I'm a Marvel guy and you're a Marvel guy. There's just that affinity
if you're
for
looking
Spider.
at it that way, the main difference is Spider-Man as a character is set up as the perennial underdog, where he has been created to overcome odds, whereas Batman has been defined as the guy who's going to kick everybody's ass who comes up to face him.
Right.
So kind of by definition, you're not going to have a tremendous gallery of villains that all are going to make Batman, you know, unless it's really contrived, you know.
Right.
Not all going to give him that kind of realistic run for his money outside of like Ra's al Ghul is the one that is always, and the Joker, you know. And the Joker is tenuous because he really shouldn't have as hard a time with the Joker as he does have with the Joker, you know. But Ra's al Ghul, I can see it.
Yeah.
But, you know, Batman just, and the whole time I was sick last week, the whole week that I was on vacation over Thanksgiving, had a cough and a cold.
Yeah, me too.
And I watched the entire first season of Batman 66
Don't tell me anything.
No
Blu-ray. Spoilers.
And so I'm in this mode of like, you know, okay, Riddler and Penguin and Joker and Bookworm and, you know, some of the ones, you know, Bookworm, who was, you know, new in the Marcia, Queen of Diamonds. And
oh my God, I forgot about her. Yeah.
That show is still phenomenal. I'm watching it and it's just.
You like it? The production value?
Oh, God.
Do you get any extras with it?
I think at some point, I think there's like a disc that's got extras. I was just kind of watching the episodes straight through.
Right. How did it look?
Did it look good? You know what's weird? First season of Batman, right? How many episodes?
50 something?
No, it was like 36.
Oh, okay.
second season of Batman. Here, I got it over here. Episode type. So first season of Batman, 36 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
34 episodes.
Because
Sorry.
they were doing it twice a week.
Yeah. Second season, 60 episodes. Third season, 26 episodes.
Wow.
So 3 seasons of Batman, and we've got 96, 102, 122 episodes. Wow. 3 seasons.
That's 6 seasons in regular TV land.
It's 6 or 7 seasons. I mean, that's the, you know, Star Trek The Next Generation was on
7 seasons.
7 years, and it had like, what, about 180 episodes?
Wow. Jesus. They were churning them out.
That was a lot of episodes. You know, it's just I'm watching these episodes, and each one that comes up, what I didn't remember as much since it had been so long since I'd watched it is just Steven would come walking into the room and it would be on, and he would stand there for 5 minutes and watch it and make some pithy comment and leave. It was usually along the lines of, you know, they have a really unique way of talking, don't they? You know, because everybody, and then you start watching, it's like everybody has a very unique voice. You know, it's that, you know, Commissioner Gordon and Chief O'Hara is so worthless. How does that dude draw a paycheck? This is amazing. It's like him and like 2 or 3 other dudes in the full police uniform.
Saints be praised.
All they do is stand around Commissioner Gordon's office, like completely incapable of, you know, doing anything.
No, they can do. There's plenty they can do. They can look over at that red phone that's under the cake plate over there.
Yeah, you know. But, you know, Alfred, you know, has got his way. Aunt Harriet has her voice. And it's like all the different villains, especially the recurring ones. You know, Joker, Penguin, and Riddler in particular. Frank Gorshin, phenomenal job.
Genius. Absolutely. He's my favorite of all of them.
I mean, watching that, just the way he plays the Riddler
just manic.
Is amazing. Yeah. It's going to make it very painful to watch the episodes where John Astin's stuff.
I know.
It's just like, you know, just skip the Riddler episodes if Frank Gorshin's not available. Come on.
Wait till you're on your third Mr. Freeze.
Mr. Freeze, I don't think was ever played by the same guy twice. You know? I mean, he was Otto Preminger. Yep. He was who was the first one?
I can't remember the other ones. I do remember Otto.
First season, Mr. Freeze. George Sanders.
That's right. That's right.
And so he was only on once in the first season. And then the second season, he was Otto Preminger. And then the third Mr. Freeze, let's see. You know, we had Marsha, Queen of Diamonds, come back. Who is your weakest Batman TV series villain, do you think?
The weakest? Falseface.
I didn't mind Falseface. Sandman, Michael Rennie.
Jeez. That was kind of cool though, because they spoofed it on The Simpsons once. they spoofed his character, so.
Okay, Eli Wallach.
That was the third one. That's right.
Tuco from
yeah.
You know, like, Blondie, what you doing?
All right, listen. Before we go, there was one episode that freaked me out as a kid, and it still freaks me out. And now, I don't know how many of these you've watched, but there was an episode where it ended with Robin being eaten by a giant clam.
I haven't gotten to that one yet.
Oh, my God. it traumatized me, and I remember watching it when it first ran. So I must have been 3 or 4 years old. But the end of the episode is this clam, and it's all closed up, and you've got Robin's little foot sticking out with that little dainty boot, just kind of wiggling, and it was terrifying. I had to wait a whole week to find out if he got out or not.
That's just the next day, wasn't it?
No, I think it was late. It was like Tuesdays and Thursdays.
The original air dates were consecutive days.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Yeah.
Oof.
So like February 23rd and 24th, March 2nd and 3rd. So if you were watching it on a Tuesday, Thursday, it was probably a rerun.
Yeah, probably a syndicated one.
I do remember. Okay, now King Tut. I liked Victor Buono, and I really enjoy David Wayne as the Mad Hatter. I mean, there are a lot of really good bad guys in
Art Carney,
Batman. The Minstrel.
I call him Green Arrow.
No, Van Johnson is the Minstrel. Art Carney was the Archer.
The Green Arrow.
Yeah. The Arrow. The Archer. The Archer.
Bookworm.
He's next.
Bookworm
He's
is a good
the
one.
He's the first villain in season 2.
Was it Cliff Robertson as Shame?
Shame. I don't know about that one. That one was...
Tallulah Bankhead as, what was it, the Black Widow?
Yeah, her and, they had some crazy ones. Her and they had... who was that one who went on with Egghead?
Egghead, Vincent Price.
Egghead had some woman with him in one of the episodes. Olga, Ann Baxter.
Right. Oh, wasn't she? She was on Ann Baxter.
Olga
wasn't she
and her
Cassandra?
Olga and her Cossacks. And then, remember Lord Fogg? It was Rudy Valley
Yep.
and Glynis Johns. That was crazy. And Milton Berle. Louis the
Lilac.
And Chantel.
Jill St. John.
Chantel was Liberace. Jill St. John was one of...
That's from the first episode.
Yeah, she was Riddler's
Died a
mom.
horrible death. Just like Catwoman, who fell down the bottomless chasm because she was greedy.
Okay, so the special feature disc has got a bunch of features on it. Batmania is like there's 2, 4, 6, 7 different special features on the bonus disc. Well, I'll get to that. Anyway, you want to wrap it up with show a couple of recent acquisitions?
Yes. Show us what you got. Ooh. Uh-oh. So how many do you have left now?
This one brings me down, I believe, to this is number 38. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 more.
Nice.
That includes the 2 biggies, which are the first appearance of the Wasp, and then, of course, the Man in the Anthill.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that one. That one's going to be a grand. So, but see who's in this one.
I can't.
Marvel's version of Egghead.
Oh, yeah. I remember that guy.
Marvel's Vincent Price.
Yeah, he shows
And then
up forever.
I picked this up dirt cheap.
Doc Savage, very nice.
$4 plus shipping.
That's a steal. Very nice.
It's a little beat, but
it's a good reader.
1948. The Pure Evil. So few things are pure. So what have you got for us?
All right. Got any websites you want to talk about real quick?
Comic Spectrum. I put up my Flying Below the Radar for December that people can check out. It's not going to be loaded with superheroes, but if you're interested in some cool comics that are non-superhero, that's what the point of that feature is.
Hey, let's do the preview one next week.
Okay.
I'll grab one this weekend and we'll go through and it'll be fun.
In fact, I just got my DCBS box today. I should have a previews in it somewhere. I'll have to dig it out. I just opened it before you came along.
Callously interrupted. Look at that. Good stuff.
I am pulling out bins of comics. These are my weekly comics. There's a lot of them here.
Holy cow.
Oh, wow, look at this.
Ooh. Very nice.
Nelvana, the Northern Lights. Lost pages of Adrian Dingle's Triumph comics, first appearing in 1941. She was one of the first Canadian superheroes.
There you go, for our friends to the north.
I had never seen that before. There was a Kickstarter for it, which I passed on because it had a tremendous shipping cost because it was coming from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the previews catalog, which we'll go over next time.
Very nice.
So that is in there. I've got it. And what is the bottom of my box here? 2 more hardcovers. Ooh, look at that.
Oh, that's a big one. What do
The
we got?
Borgias.
Hey!
Jodorowsky and Milo Manara.
Nice.
Forward to that.
Coffee
and
table.
the second volume of Zenith
Oh, very nice.
by Grant Morrison. And Steve Yoel. Not sure how to pronounce that guy's name. Okay, so that was my box. I've got 3 hardcovers, previews catalog, and a stack of comics. Yay thick.
That's just enough to keep you busy until the next box shows up.
1 week's reading. I read I probably read close to 350 to 400 comics while I was out sick that week. I was reading comics and I was watching Batman and then reading comics and watching Batman because I was off that whole week. They had they shut down our whole company for that week.
Nice.
But Janine didn't have it off, except, so like, well, what am I going to do? It's like hang around and read. Kept me out of the bars.
That's right. Sounds like you are recovering quickly, which is good. And you got to catch up on some books. I'm actually thinking about, they're talking about a new iPad coming out, a bigger one. And I'm actually thinking about that because I want to see what a digital comic looks like in actual size. And I think this one will be big enough that you can actually do that, but we'll get to it at another time.
Comic book. Mr. iPad Man.
Yeah.
I have an iPad and I can read the comics pretty much just fine on my regular iPad.
Mm-hmm. I just want to see what they look like on a bigger screen. Just out of curiosity.
Bigger.
Yeah.
As long as you've got a Retina display, they're very crisp.
Yeah. Sometimes too crisp. All right, buddy. Let's wrap it up.
Okay.
And I will see
See
you.
you next time.
Yeah, well, maybe Sunday, but definitely by Wednesday. All right, folks. Next issue is the preview issue. We're going to start calling these issues instead of episodes because that's the way we are. Ta-ta for now.